Del Ritter. Some of you may remember 2 years ago we accepted into our museums the Ned Ritter tools. And at that time, Del had mentioned about the jobs of moving houses and how he had worked with Ned and was willing to use the slides that Ned had prepared to come up with a program. And so even though we've waited a couple of years, we're so glad to have him here. I had a slight preview. It's pretty exciting. Del was born in Beavertown, Pennsylvania. He attended West Snyder High School and graduated from there in '69. He continued his education at Technical School for Computer Programming and started working at Tri-County National Bank. He later joined R.P. Lewis Company in Lewisburg, which in 1980 became CSSI, and he was one of the owners. He worked there for 35 years, retiring in 2010. He did work with Ned on moving the houses. He hinted to me that maybe he was thinking about taking over, or Ned wanted him to take over, but after you see these slides, maybe you'll think like I do, and I'm like, no way. So anyhow, please welcome Del. After the program, you certainly will have time for questions and answers, and join us downstairs for some light refreshments. So, Del, come on up.
I don't know if I'm going to use this or not, but if it helps somebody here, I guess I will. She gave a pretty good introduction, and the way this came about, one of my cousins, Holly, which is Ned's daughter, is here, and I knew that Ned took some slides when he was moving houses. I didn't know there was 900 to 1,000 of them. So when Holly gave me the packet, I said, well, I'm going to have to get a flatbed scanner, and we're going to scan them into the computer, and the cameras weren't quite as good back then, and when you transfer it electronically, you lose a little bit, but some of the slides weren't great, but I hope that you'll be able to see something of how houses were moved from the 50s, 60s, and at least the 70s. The reason people moved houses either was that they wanted to move it, or the state actually was widening a road, and the state would actually give you money towards getting your house moved. We moved a bunch because of Raystown Lake, the Howard Dam, and you can see there's even some down by the PP&L power plant that were on here that were moved for lines to be put in. So there was a number of reasons why people did moving. Ned also, in 1975, wrote an article for the Snyder County Historical Society on house moving. So if you want to get a copy of that, that's actually good reading also. I even learned a lot in there. The first houses that were moved were actually moved with wooden rollers. They had rollers under the houses, you had planks, and you actually moved the house very slow, but you moved it from one location to the other, very short distance. When years went past, they went to a steel pipe filled with concrete, and they did kind of the same thing with moving. But I know in 1962, Ned ordered his first set of rubber-tired dollies to move houses on the road. Pennsylvania would not let you move a house on the road unless you had rubber tires. So you had to have a rubber tire dolly, and these came from Illinois. You'll see some pictures of these, but that is the first time that we really moved houses on a road. Before that, we took them through the fields, or you'll see one where it's going through the river. So, Can we turn the lights out? I hope everybody can still see. I hope this works from here.
Have you guys had this?
Maybe I won't be able to see.
Have you had this? Oh, you had it? Okay.
Okay, Ned was my uncle. Ned was in Paxtonville. I couldn't believe this, but I got paid to sleep. Ned paid from portal to portal. So when we left in the morning, very early, until we got back at night, we got paid the whole time. So when we were dead tired, riding home, we got paid to sleep. This is called cribbing. It's a lot of work that's done to go underneath a house when you actually start. You can see some of the, I have a pointer on here too. Boy, this is dark. These are steel pipes filled with concrete, and the house would roll. You would push it, and up here some more. Wherever these were steel beams, they were rolling out across on these planks. So this might be actually where the house was being rolled onto the new foundation. But this cribbing, we actually put on the tractor trailer truck, and we actually took it off, and we put it in the basements, which was a lot of work. I often said there wasn't a schooling for house moving. Ned didn't have an engineering degree, but he sure did a lot of computing and figuring. When you moved a house, not only did you have to know the local rules, and you had to know what the state was going to charge you for a police escort, or you would actually have to get wires moved by BB&L. All those things went into the cost of the move, and it was very easy to miss something. And again, here you can see all the cribbing that's used in getting either one prepared. This actually looks like it might be one where we actually were rolling the house away from it. And again, here you can see the rollers. You can see the steel beams here. And the rollers, that's how we just moved that house. And again, it was a short distance, but that's how they moved houses early on. Here's one that's coming across onto some cribbing to get it across into a new area. Okay, I'm looking for some of the jacks here, but didn't find them yet. It was surprising to me how many churches Ned moved. Ned moved a lot of churches. And I know Ned was a Christian man himself, so maybe he gravitated towards helping the churches out. I'm not sure. But I have a book here with some articles in, and there's quite a few churches that were moved. This is the bottle jack that's here. When we actually started working, and there's some bottle jacks here, we would first have to put the cribbing in, and then we would have to jack the house up in the air so that we could get these steel beams underneath it. Sometimes we use these I-beams, and sometimes we use the box beam. This is a house that actually now is on the dollies. You can see the dollies here, and they were tires that were used on the landing gear for airplanes. But this was the first time that Ned moved houses on the road. You can see the cabling here, or the block and tackle here that is used to actually pull this house. Sometimes we actually had it close enough we could use a tongue, even though it was a long tongue. But a lot of times we actually used the block and tackle and actually just pulled the house for a ways.
Do you know where this one is?
Do you know which house this is?
No. No more questions from you. That's my wife. That's
It was.
Another thing you can see here, there's a beam here along the edge. We used to have to, if this was a brick-faced house, you used to have to pin the bricks every so often so you could hold these up here, so they would not fall. And you had brick homes that were actually brick walls, sometimes very thick, and you had other wooden homes that just had brick facing on it. There's a lot of these houses I didn't know exactly where they were from. This looks like they're preparing to lay up the new foundation. They rolled the house in, and the new blocks are here, and they're laying blocks up to put the new foundation under it before they drop the house down onto it. This over here, you can see where the pointer is. That's a screw jack. When I started, we had a lot of screw jacks, and there was a metal bar that went in through the screw jack at the top, and you actually just turned it like a quarter of a turn or a half a turn. And we would holler to each other so that all the turning would go up at the same time, so we didn't twist the house. And then we went from there to the bottle jacks, but we did the same thing with the bottle jacks. We actually hollered to each other so that we tried to keep the house going up at the same time all around. Here you can see there's corners of the bricks that we actually held with a cable around it so that they didn't fall off. So this probably was a brick-faced house, and we were holding the bricks together as it was being moved. And there's the bricks are pinned here on the bottom too, so that they didn't fall down. Porches, sometimes we took porches along, sometimes we didn't. You can see they actually have a cable at the top here too, holding the bricks on. This is another picture of the dollies. And it's going to be hard for you to see me do this, but the dollies actually had a knuckle on them, and I hold my fist up because it was like my fist. And on top of that was a plate with a cup, and the cup went over the knuckle, and we filled that with grease. And the plate that was on top got cabled fast to the steel. And the idea there is that the wheels could turn and twist in that knuckle, and that would allow the house not to twist. The house could stay, the ground actually moved, the wheels moved, but the house didn't. We told a lot of people to take their dishes out of their kitchen cabinets. We told them to take the pictures down. A lot of them didn't heed, and they lost some dishes, but you can't move one without getting some cracked plaster in it. It just happened. Here you can see a tongue that's used here with the front dolly. We usually had a front dolly and then two on the back. And one thing that Ned had to do is he had to estimate where the weight was within the house. This house is a newer house, but we had some old houses with a lot of rooms and a lot of fireplaces and a lot of bathrooms, and everything had different weight. So he tried to figure out where to put these beams. And sometimes you'll see that this one here looks like it might be angled a little bit like the other one is on the other side. And that was to try to catch as much of the weight with the steel box beam as possible. This is a piece that's used to put two dollies together. One dolly was just four wheels, but here we're actually putting two together, and has that plate up here on top. So these wheels could actually move to the right or left, and hopefully this top part up here just stayed steady. And again, you can see up here where the blocks are and the boards. This was a stone-faced house, and you can see they're trying to hold the stone on while it's being moved. And again, this is just another picture of the dollies here underneath the house. This is the dollies when he got them, what they look like new. This is that knuckle I was talking to you about that we filled with grease, and then the plate and the cup would sit on top of it. This is the plate that would sit on top of there. It was kind of a neat idea because you could actually move it over fields and rough terrain, and it did not twist the house nearly as much as if you didn't have that environment. This is a bottle jack. I think they were like 20 ton at the time, and you still had to manually put a piece of pipe in here. And again, when we actually lifted the house, we would holler to each other so we all went up at the same time. And this is the screw jacks that I was talking about. They obviously take a lot longer, and you need a lot more room to use them. I'm sure this one was actually put up before it was pushed in to where it is, because you couldn't get a pipe in that small of an area. But a lot of labor intense. Can you see how much labor it took to get the cribbing in and to get things jacked up and everything? And I think Ned's article said that he moved 15 to 25 houses a year. So that was a lot of work to get done. And Ned was, well, maybe he's like me, I don't know, but he was good-hearted. We'd move the house and we had a contract, and then the person would say, well, won't you pour our sidewalk? Well, won't you guys pour the garage floor? We didn't know if we'd get paid or not, but Ned said, sure, we'll do it. So hopefully he got paid for a lot of it, but it took our time away. And I told him, I said, we're falling behind on the next house, and we make more money by moving houses, not by fixing everybody's upkeep. So, and again, this is bottle jacks and screw jacks that were involved here. Here you can see some screw jacks with cribbing. I'm not sure who this young man is, but I know he's tightening the bolts on the cable with the block and tackle there. This was an old army truck right here that we used to pull most of the houses. My memory is that had 10 wheels, and that all 10 were driving. Joe, do you have any input on that?
I think you're right.
Yeah, because there was a governor set on it, and I think on the road we only could go 40 miles an hour with it. Of course, pulling houses, we didn't go more than a mile or two an hour. But a lot of times we had another truck, a tractor trailer truck, that we had holding back. Pulling a house is one thing, but when you're going downhill, you want to hold back too, so that it doesn't end up pushing the truck that's pulling. This one looks like we're just moving it across the field. You can see that there's no planking here. If we had a good, hard, solid base, that was not a problem. This is an example of that plate on top of that knuckle right here. You see that? That plate would get cabled fast to this bottom of this box beam, and then that's how that dolly would ride on there. This is the famous Ralph Musser. Ralph worked for Ned for a lot of years. I learned a lot of things from Ralph I never knew before. But it looks like we're pulling this house onto a foundation at the time here. And this looks like it's a little bit in reverse, but it looks like we're pulling with the truck backwards, pulling it out. You can see the dollies and another setup with the cables there. This was a church. I even tried to blow that up and find out exactly where that was, but I think it might have been up around Middleburg. Joe and I have an experience. Was that a church or a school, Joe?
That was a church.
Church.
It might be that.
They had no basement under the church. So they dug around with a backhoe, probably a 5-foot deep ditch, maybe 6, all the way around the church. And Joe and I were tasked with digging with a shovel and a grubbing hoe in through to make tunnels for the steel to go under. Well, there was animals under there, there was rats under there, and we were pulling the dirt back out and putting it into the ditch that was going around. All of a sudden, we heard thunder. Here the backhoe hit the church with the bucket, and it was brick-faced, and all the brick came off the church. And it filled the ditch higher than the ground, and Ned came running around and wondered where we were, and we had enough of a hole, we jumped in with the rats, didn't we, Joe? But yeah, this is another church that they moved. This actually was done with 2 bulldozers. I think the guy had his excavators there, and they moved it across the field. And the story I remember is that the 2 bulldozers pushed this house. There might even be one in the front. There's something yellow in the front there that they might have had one in front pulling it too. But that is just moved across the field. How far did we ever move one? The furthest that I remember is the East Mall down in Harrisburg, going out like Route 39. There was a diner, the old silver diners. They come apart in 2 pieces. They were designed this way. The seating part was one half, and the kitchen was the other half. So they came apart, and we took the diner in 2 pieces from over by the East Mall, down around below Harrisburg, came up and brought it to Duncannon. And we did that in 2 pieces. So sometimes you move them far, and sometimes you don't. This is a shed that they actually had jacked up and were pulling. So this wasn't a house, this was a shed. And I'm not sure about this one. This is a different truck even than I remember Ned having. But it does say Hershey's ice cream up here, so I don't know if they were still selling Hershey's ice cream or not. But this gentleman here is using a pole to push the wires up to get the house under it. If you could get enough room and you didn't have to call PP&L to move it, it was a lot cheaper. Again, this is a stone-faced house. And Ned has a lot more dollies than the first 3 that he bought here, because he has at least 6 there. So the stone is cabled fast up above and down below. The corners are braced. And here we were pouring a footer probably to get ready to lay some block. This was our crane. This was actually down at Ned's barn where we actually stored the box beams and stuff when we were taking them off the tractor trailer truck here. So you can just see, the reason I even titled it The Art of Moving Houses, I think Ned had the ability to really see things and to work with something, how do I want to say? We didn't have the best equipment, but we did the best we did with what we had. But it was a tough job. Here we had a flatbed, and here was the little crane, and we sometimes didn't want to drive both of them, so we put it on the back and haul it. And again, here are the dollies. We had to haul those from place to place, and some of the cribbing. We didn't have tie-down straps. We just had chains and chain binders. Oh, I wonder if I can go back. This metal thing that you see here going out across the top of the dollies, that was a tongue. So we put that back to the front dolly and use that to steer the house. And again, here's how we hold the box beams. And I don't know how they ever stayed on as far as we took them. I guess we were just blessed. Here's another, and again, I'm not sure exactly what year. Maybe some of you people know what year these International Harvester trucks are from, but they weren't the newest. I said about them using a roller in the early days that was a wooden roller. This is one of the wooden rollers here, and it had a bar in it like this to actually move it. Now this is kind of upside down because this piece here sat on the wood beam or the steel, and then it rolled on this. Here you can see an example of how that would be. But that's what they used early on before they had dollies. This is a crew taking a lunch break. There was quite a few people that worked for Ned. And I know I'm amazed that sometimes people come up to me and say, yeah, I used to work for Ned too in the summers. I said, oh, okay.
Can you name the group?
No, this is Danny McAfee here. Is that Art McAfee? There was a number of McAfees. Holly, any help?
No.
No? Okay.
Siri Warwick in any of those pictures, Del?
What's that?
Is Siri Warwick in any of those pictures?
He might have been. He might have been there. This is, I think, up in Milton. And if you can see this, and talk about having a rig, this is an extension ladder with a 2x4 on the top trying to lift the wires to get it out onto the street. Like I said, if we could lift the wires and didn't have to get people to move them, it was a lot cheaper. This is Ted Horner from Mechanicsburg. Ned actually did take some pictures of other people moving. This is Heinz Hall, I think, up at Lock Haven University. They moved it. And Ted Horner was from Mechanicsburg, another house mover. He had a much nicer, newer truck.
You want to hear a story about that truck? I knew a mechanic years ago that worked for him.
Oh, okay.
He said when they were, now he didn't work for him full time, but he was moving a house. He said he paid me to sit on the fender of that truck. If it sneezed, I was supposed to take care of it immediately.
Dennis Yetter, you're here too, somewhere in the back. This is Beavertown Block. They actually drove the truck in and drove it under the house, and then they picked the blocks off from the Beavertown Block truck here. Again, another church. And that's where that Beavertown Block truck was underneath. You can see how the cribbing's up in the air, and we're just going to get ready to lay a block wall around it to set it back down one. Another church. As I said, Ned moved a lot of churches. And I don't know, this one looks like it could have had a crawl space under it too. It sure didn't have a big basement. If it did, it might have had under part of it. But In any case, you can see how thick the walls are here, and we had to bust those apart to be able to get beams through. So there was a lot of work, a lot of times before you even got to put cribbing in or the beams through. There they're knocking the concrete foundation apart. And every now and then you'll have the brick fall off, like they did here. So, we actually saved the brick, as you can see it here, so that they could re-put it on later. But here's the brick being pinned, so that we save as many as possible. Looks like there was a chimney on the side here we took off. Okay, this guy in the white shirt, that's the only picture of me. We were down at Rhodes Mill, and we were setting this feed bin up, but we had also moved this feed bin from out back of Evendale and moved it down to Rhodes Mill. And I sat on the top of that and was lifting the wires over top of it in Richfield. And some guy come running out of the house and said, "Hey, don't touch that wire. That doesn't have real good insulation on it." So, I don't know, he might have saved my life. But we move things different than houses at times. This might be the Yoder cabin. Yeah. This one was cut in half. We used a chainsaw and cut it in half and marked it so that we could bolt it back together again. But this was moved in 3 pieces. There's an article in the book I have here. Ned had saved a lot of articles of house moving, and this was one of them. This was at Raystown Dam, and these people had to get their cabin out because it was going to be flooded. So they actually took it way up on top of the hill, and they moved it in 2 pieces, and then they moved the garage as the 3rd piece. So it explains in the article how they moved it. Now this one went across the river. So this is getting ready to go across. And there's the famous Ralph Musser again. And that is Joe Fopiano, who's in our crowd today, hanging on the side of the truck. And I think that was Mrs. Yoder. As you can see, bringing it across the river. It doesn't look too bad there, but there are, and hey, you could get a free ride if you wanted to, just sit in the box beam. Here you can see how high the water was on the wheels of the truck. And Joe, you do remember moving this one, right? This was October of '69.
The problem was, there was a dam that would release water periodically to generate electricity, I think, and they were supposed to not open it up. And they got screwed up on the time, they got partway across and
They opened it up. Okay. Well, it made the job a little harder.
The water was that high. It wasn't that high when we started, but
And this is a cottage, an old cabin that they moved. And this is a hosiery place. I'm not exactly sure. I like the picture of the dollies here to show you the dollies again. But this was a big place that was being moved. And again, I'm not sure on this one if it was a road going through or what the reason was for. Sandy Ray Hosiery. Well, I see they're building a new building in the back, so maybe somebody bought it and is going to use the land. Maybe it was the sheets going in, who knows? And again, you can see here how everything was planked out through. I mean, this just takes a lot of work. And And when we planked it, because we were running on the ground, we didn't take it from the back and run it around to the front. Take it from the back, as the building kept moving, we had to keep running it around to the front, so we had planks in the front, because we didn't have enough to go the whole distance. This one was moved down, you can see the PP&L plant in the background, the old one. Ned moved the Lewisburg locker plant. The article that I read that he had in the paper said this was down close to 2nd Street. And they moved it out. It's close to, is it the VFW? Over by where the Chevy dealer used to be, at the red light. This is, there's a bowling alley in the basement that has like 6 or 8 lanes. Anyway, this is sitting back towards the railroad tracks from it. And he moved it to there. This was a locker plant for meat storage, if I'm correct. That's what they were using it for. You didn't have a big enough freezer, I guess you rented space. This is another big house that was moved. You can see the the size of that. I don't have anybody that can help me with this story, but this is the Middleburg Rescue Hose Company bingo stand at the carnival grounds. The car looks to me like it's a 50s or something maybe, but evidently the roof collapsed and they were jacking it back up again. I only had one picture, but I thought that would be good for Snyder County. Ned got involved in some other things. If anybody ever went to National Limestone Quarry and drove their truck across and then got weighed and got stoned and got weighed again, this is the scales. Ned actually put the scales in on its foundation at National Limestone Quarry. And this is the Beavertown block machine. When it came, Ned ended up moving it into the building so that they had a new block machine, making machine. Do you know where Central Oak Heights is?
Yes.
Anybody go to church camp there?
I do.
Okay, lots of you. Well, this used to be a nice entrance. And somebody said to me one time, what happened to that? Well, Ned's crew tore it down.
As in they did it.
Well, we did it because Ned moved the dining hall and he moved the president's house so that there was room for Route 15 to expand to 4 lanes. And the only thing I can figure is they couldn't get the truck in with the steel one because they took some trees down too. But that was a pretty entrance to be demolished. But this was the box beam at Central Oak Heights. So I'm sure the height of that wouldn't have went under that stone arch. And this was before it got moved, from what I can figure. This is the president's house. This is the old dining hall. And they were getting ready to move it here. They took the, actually it looks like they cut grooves in the dirt there and put the steel beams underneath. And then jacked them up, used some of the rollers to probably roll it out before they could move it. They kept the porch on here. I know one of the other porches they got rid of because it was concrete and they didn't want to haul it. I think I might have actually been going to church camp when he did this. It was before I worked for him. But this is still up at Central Oak Heights. Here they're getting rid of a porch. And I think that's a picture of the new dining hall. And you can see here, this is 11 and 15, and it's just 2 lanes. this was the president's house that they moved. Again, blocks from Beavertown Block, another Snyder County business.
Hey, Joe,
Yeah,
that archway picture you had before that, I was at North Heights, when Ned was working in there, we delivered a block over before the archway was down. Apparently they needed, put something up before they moved the hall or whatever he was working on.
Hmm.
And at that time, we didn't even have any boom on motors. We made the block we put on the truck with an old straddle pad on motor, and you couldn't get through the underpass, or through the archway. So we had to take it, deliver the block to the archway, and we picked them all off by hand on Ned's truck.
and moved them in that way.
Yeah.
Everything was labor intense. There's another labor story. But this was the president's house being moved back. And you can see how it's just being rolled on rollers there. And there's 11 and 15 when it was 2 lanes. And the house and the dining hall sat out in this section up here. And they moved it back. And this is the president's house here, and this is the dining hall. And there you can see they started knocking the bank down to make it 4-lane, which I'm sure most of you have driven through there. And this is just to show you that the girls wore dresses back then when they went to church camp. Okay, this is the Mott's house that sat where IGA sits today. And this is the little cabin that is over by the cemetery that was moved. If you look between the 2 buildings, you can see the Middleburg post office in there. This house actually, Ned said, was 125 ton, I think I marked down. And Holly, how many fireplaces did it have?
I think originally 4.
4? The thing was is that they had to take the kitchen off to get it through the streets. With the kitchen on, it wouldn't fit through the streets. Here they were getting ready to move it. I think this is one of the Schaefer boys. Doug or his brother. And you can see that they're moving it out, and the actual Sears store sign is here. And the Sears store used to sit out by the road also. And when IGA built the new building, they moved the Sears store back so it would be in line with the IGA building. So one wouldn't be up here and the other one back. But this was the start of pulling it out onto the highway. And I'm not sure why, but they might have had 2 trucks here, because this one's filled with blocks, and over here's the other old Army truck. And I'm not sure if both of them were pulling this one or not, but they might have. I know it was very, very heavy. It didn't have a lot of clearance. You can see why the kitchen had to come off. This is Ned here with the white hat on, and he's actually instructing Ralph Musser, left or right, get it over, try to miss these houses.
I don't know if you can see it or not, but on that one window, there's a can of wasp spray.
Oh,
There was a tree that had a nest in it, and they got a spray bottle and your can and sprayed it, and then they set it on the windowsill, and it stayed there the whole way.
Which window?
Right
There?
there.
Bottom
And
one.
bottom corner on the sill.
Out here?
Yeah, right there.
Okay.
Wow.
Dell, was it double, Dell?
What?
Was it double brick, double,
It was the first day.
Double what?
First day I
Double
Several.
layer of brick.
several layers of brick?
Oh, it was 12 inches thick brick. It was a solid brick house. The article that it had in the book here is, it was 12 inches thick, solid brick. This was not brick facing, this was solid brick.
Okay.
And where did that one go? Up on the hill?
Yes,
Out, yeah, up above Wayside Church.
correct.
Correct, okay, okay.
And Holly, Ned's daughter, lived there
Yes.
for a number of years.
They were asking me, what's that line that goes in front of the truck and over to?
This line here,
Yeah.
I think it's a scratch from the slide or from,
Okay.
it's nothing that I know of. Just like this is here, there's a smudge on it. Now this is, there you can see the barn that was where Lenny Crownheim's
Yeah.
car lot.
Yeah.
So they're coming out and coming up. And if I remember correctly, this was a trailer that sat here and the Ciottis lived there.
Yes.
And this was being moved out here and then up on the hill.
That's where it sat overnight.
Right here,
Yeah.
okay?
And then the pull up the hill was the hardest part of the move, according to Dad.
Yeah.
I can believe it. And he was just thankful that it didn't fall over or go backwards. You just never knew when you had something that high. I think there was one in Williamsport that we cut in half, that when we went around the corner fell over. That's the only one I ever know of that I remember them talking about. I'm not sure I was there, but I remember them talking about it. And this is Wayside Church out here, I think.
Yeah.
And there they're starting up the hill. I think it's pretty close to being at its final location here. But they took your porch along too, Holly.
Yeah.
Just didn't give you a kitchen.
She put the kitchen inside.
Yeah. And here's the box beams that they used and the cribbing. And here they were pulling the dollies out. And I know this is Keith Kleinpeter. He was my neighbor in Beavertown. Keith worked for Ned for a while. I'm not sure. This is Doug McAfee?
I think he's giving Ralph a high five.
He is. They were happy that they got the dollies out. There was a lot of happy points. And there's the blocks that are going to go into the foundation.
I think Hum worked for him for a while, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. 'Cause Hum was the mud mixer when they were laying blocks.
Laying blocks.
Yeah,
Okay.
he makes mud for me every night. He knew what he was doing.
And that is my last slide. You saw 145 of the 900. If you have any questions, I'll try.
I might have missed it. Did you work with Ned until the end of his?
No, I worked for Ned in the summers when I was in high school. So I worked for him for 4 summers. And I think Ned wanted me to stay on and keep working with him and maybe take over. And I just didn't see house moving as a long-term good job, so I got into the computer field instead.
I think one of his latter projects was the Messiah Lutheran Church at Mifflintown. And they wanted to put a basement underneath. So they had to jack it up. They didn't get somebody who was supposed to do it, who supposedly knew what they were doing, and it got too overwhelming. And they kind of panicked into what to do, and then stepped in and bailed them out.
Oh, he He did a lot of things. I know Ronnie Kreutzer was in church this morning. Ronnie said, you know, he lifted my house and we put a different floor under the bottom of it. So Ronnie's was a single story, now it's a high level. And, you know, so he did a lot of those types of things too. Dennis?
Yeah, one comment here, when Ned moved Holly's house, later on after it was established in its own foundation, and did all remodeling and everything inside. Neighbors and friends and church people, we were over there for an open house one time. And, we went in the basement and Ned had this big, humongous mountain stone fireplace.
Fireplace.
Yeah, laid up, and some of those mountain stones were massive, you know, and he laid them up by hand. And I said, Ned, however what machine did you use to get them up? He just winked and he said, where there's a will, there's a way. He was actually a mechanical genius.
Yeah, I think too he was.
Yes,
That's why I titled it
he
The Art of
could
House
figure out how to
Moving.
do anything.
He was an artist.
Yeah.
Yeah, Noreen?
Now, I know there's a lot of variables, but how, from the start to the end of moving, how long does it take? Or is that a dumb question? Like when you start the project to finish it, what are we talking time frame? And yes, I understand the variables.
Yeah, there is variables.
Okay.
Obviously, the size of it, did it have a basement that we could just knock some walls out and put cribbing in and roll it out? Or did we have to jack it up and try to get everything in? I'm remembering like 8 weeks, 6, 8 weeks sometimes. When we had as many people as we had, we actually got a lot of things done in a day. And I'm not sure exactly what time we left in the morning, but I remember like at 6:30 and we didn't get home till 6:30. So,
Well,
yeah.
do you know, did he move the one down at the traffic circle?
He did not. Ted Horner moved that one.
Oh, okay.
He has an article about it though.
Traffic circle.
Just the iron home.
Yeah,
The Sunbury Bridge or something?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that,
Yeah.
I worked on that one. I mean, I think it was already moved and I just helped pack cribbing, load cribbing.
Well, there's
I
an
did move one that was there.
Okay.
there's an article here that Ned saved about it, and he said it was a 2-story frame farmhouse, white, weighed over 150 tons. It had 14 rooms in the house, and it was at the Circle of Shamokin Dam. It was moved on December 1974 by Ted Horner of Mechanicsburg. So Ted moved that one, the guy that had that nice blue truck. Yes, Holly?
I remember when I think it was in Shamokin Dam, that they moved the house, everything went really well, they left it right at the edge of the new foundation overnight. When they came back, the house was like this. It collapsed. You know,
Collapsed?
It was all fill in the lot.
Oh, so the weight of it went, pushed it down.
So they jacked it back up.
Yeah.
I mentioned some dishes moving that.
What year was this house moved?
1970.
It's my first day of school.
Oh.
First day of teaching schools when they moved the house.
So were you at school or were you at the house
I was
move?
at school.
Well, okay.
Missed the whole thing.
Well, I was working at the bank and I was able to sneak out and watch a little bit, I know, so. Yes.
All the years of moving those houses, that heavy hard work all underneath and the things that could happen. Were they blessed to do all those years without any serious injuries?
Ned had 2 articles in here about 2 other gentlemen that were killed with house moving. The worst part I remember is Ned had a corner fall on a guy's leg and broke his leg up in here. That's the worst that I remember.
One of the inch boys.
Yeah, it was an inch boy, yeah.
But none of his men were killed.
No, none of Ned's were killed, but it does happen.
Ted Horner's son that got killed? Some other house mover's
Son?
son, I think. Not sure if it was Ted Horner or not.
Ted was from Mechanicsburg, and there was a group from New York. And I don't think I told this story here.
No.
The ones from New York I met down at the ranch house. We were actually eating, and they were in there and had shirts on. And I went over and talked to them, and they said, "Hey, I know you worked for years and years," because they were moving houses, and it was the third generation. So their grandfather was the one that competed with Ned. So I went out to look, and they were on their way to Hershey to raise a barn, to put a new foundation under a barn. And they had these long, I'm going to say 10-inch high by 6-inch wide beams, and they had hydraulic hoses attached to them. And they just set those underneath. The guy sat in the truck and went like this, and the whole thing went up. I said, "That's no fair." Where's your screw jack? So, yeah, times have changed in a lot of different ways, even in moving houses.
But I think the presentation and Ned doing this is more pronounced than easy peasy. We appreciate the historical part of doing it that way,
Yeah.
if you will. That's just me talking.
Joe?
Where did he get all the dollies? I don't remember there being 3. I don't know if I just don't remember.
Yeah, I have the actual letter he sent to the company. September 24th, 1962, Ned ordered 3 4-wheel dollies from Modern Hydraulics Incorporated in West Chicago, Illinois. The cost was $1,185 each. But that's when, in 62 is when he ordered 3. But I don't know when he got the rest of them.
More of them, because I don't remember there being more than 3 in the time that I worked for him, which,
Yeah.
59 was glad.
But that was a lot of money.
73,
Oh, in 62, it was a lot of money.
Yeah.
somewhere after my junior year.
All right, thank you.
I just wanted to share, I have fond memories of Ned, and mainly through his work with the Historical Society. Ned was president of the society when we relocated from the basement to Cypress Hall at Susquehanna and bought this building from the first UCC church when they built. And Ned provided real good leadership, and he was great to work with, very amiable. And there were several projects to be undertaken, and of course with Ned, that was just a piece of cake. No problem, we just get some volunteers together and do it. And the rear portion of this building, it was 1 floor. And Ned said, "Well, we'll just take it to another floor up for storage." And arranged for the block to be delivered, and he has got some volunteers together, and of course at that time some of us were concerned because they were all rather up in years. And some of them were a little tottery, but they just had a great time. They were in their glory, and they laid block to up to the second floor, and that's our storage area on this level for the mat. And of course re-roofed it, whatever. And there were other projects he undertook. At one point, we talked about moving the Moats Log Cabin from the cemetery over to our property, but that was before we put the addition on, around the year 1999 and 2000. And Ned had said at that time, if we're going to move it, it's got to be done now because it won't stand the move any longer. But that did not happen, and it was a blessing it didn't happen because that would have been in the way with the addition that we put on the building. But Ned and Ray Roush, Jack Spade from Harrisburg, who had bad knees and was tottery, they put the ceiling in the first floor museum, and they just had rickety sawhorses and then plywood across the top. And Jack was very tottery anyhow. We were scared to death. He'd walk across there, and Bill Rigel from Paxtonville, and it was an amazing crew. They worked really hard, and they worked on the Soldiers Memorial Building over in the French Flats here in Middleburg. They would tackle about anything. I just wanted to share that with you because we were all very grateful for the work that he did and for his service as president of the Historical Society.
Well, if you like this presentation, we have presentations lined up for all of next year already. So if you like what you saw here today, we welcome you to join us if you're not already a member. If those of you that are members may remember that we produced annual bulletins, and this is the one that Del talked about in 1975. That must have been a good year. We had an overrun of them. So I brought some up from the storage room, and you're welcome to take a copy if you want to read Ned's article in here. You're welcome to take a copy with
Very
you.
interesting.
So we have them out there. Again, a big round of applause for Del and
Any that haven't signed it, please do. We just like a complete record of, we're not gonna track you down. We just like a complete record of who is here.
So please join us downstairs for some light refreshments, and I think Del will be around a little bit too if you want to talk to him further. And thank you all for coming out today.